Welcome into part 2 of episode 1 of Hog Talk. We have the second part of that Mark Bernard interview coming up in just a little bit. But first, let's get to some team news. We'll take a look at the promotional calendar, and we'll also take a look back at prospect camp as well. But first, back on September 7th, longtime IceHogs captain Garrett Mitchell announced his retirement. Very happy for Garrett as he gets to ride off into the sunset of his hockey playing career, so to speak, and spend some more time with the family. Captain for 3 years here with the IceHogs, also spent 9 seasons with the Hershey Bears, a couple of those seasons as their captain as well, 3 in fact. So 3 years wearing the C here in Rockford, 3 years in Hershey wearing the captain's C as well. He played in parts of 4 seasons here in Rockford, 537 total AHL games for Garrett Mitchell, and he was truly a pleasure to be around. I got here in January, and very quickly he made me feel like I was part of the group, and I know many players can say the same. He is the quintessential captain if you ask anybody from around the AHL, anybody from around the Central Division in particular over the last couple years, and they'll tell you that Garrett Mitchell is everything you want in one of the leaders for your hockey club. Kind of a funny story. It was game 2 of the first round of the playoffs when Rockford beat Iowa at Wells Fargo Arena, and Garrett was injured. He had some shoulder injuries late in that season last year. And so he would join me on the broadcast from time to time, and he was in the booth for this playoff game. And when Buddy Robinson scored that overtime goal, you can still hear on the broadcast, if you go back and listen, Buddy Robinson scores the goal. I'm in the middle of my call going crazy, and you can hear Garrett Mitchell throw his headset down on air, sprint to the elevator so that he could get down to the dressing room and celebrate with his teammates. But he was that kind of guy. The team always came first for him. He made such an effort to make sure that the team was a team in the dressing room as much as they were on the ice. And I think that speaks to the kind of guy that he was. And we're going to definitely miss his leadership here in Rockford. And he's set a high standard over the last couple of years of what it means to be an IceHogs captain. And it begs the question, who is going to be the next IceHogs captain? Would love to hear everyone's thoughts on who's going to wear the C next for Rockford. One name that I have circled a little bit, and there's no insider information here, just speculation, is Josh Healy, a veteran defenseman who has worn the A for the Chicago Wolves previously over the last couple of seasons. And he also is the founder of SportsOx. It's basically a hockey networking platform, data gathering platform. A good way to put it would be the Rate My Professor for hockey players. It's a way for hockey players and coaches to kind of exchange information about different organizations and about different individuals so players can make more informed decisions about what direction they want to take their career and where they want to play when they hit free agency or in the trade market or things like that. So a really cool platform that Healy has developed called SportsOx. And it's interesting to see that he has kind of shown that initiative off the ice to be a leader in the sport. Would love to see if he is maybe a leader on the ice for the IceHogs this year because he seems pretty capable and pretty put together in terms of what he has accomplished on the business side. So just kind of an interesting name to throw out there, Josh Healy, veteran defenseman who Mark Bernard brought in this past offseason. Some other news, some negative news for the IceHogs. The team MVP from last season, Luke Philp, had a career year last year, tore his Achilles this offseason in training. He's going to be out 6 months. He won't be back until about February, they believe, in recovery of that Achilles injury. So the Achilles has claimed Luke Philp and Aaron Rodgers here this year, unfortunately. 6 new guys have been signed to AHL deals for the Rockford IceHogs. We mentioned Josh Healy, a couple names to look out for as well. Anders Bjork, who had a great end of the season after he arrived in Chicago with the Blackhawks, 8 points in 13 games with the Hawks. So small sample size, but was impressive nonetheless. And then Ryan Gagne as well, out of the OHL and the Oshawa Generals. Gagne was voted on by the coaches in the OHL as one of the best defensive forwards in the league last season, one of the best penalty killers as well. So he could be a tough guy to play against in the Central Division and could be a winning piece for this IceHogs team. It's going to be a young team here for Rockford. We know that. There's going to be a bunch of rookies, a bunch of prospects coming in. And we got to see a lot of that young talent at prospect camp this past weekend. We had camp the first 3 days at Fifth Third Arena in Chicago. And then after that, we played a couple of showcase games in St. Paul against the prospects for the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild. The Blackhawks prospects won Game 1 against the Blues 5-0. The Blues were playing their second game in as many nights, and it really showed. And then the Blackhawks prospects had to do the same thing, play a 2-2, and they got beat by the Minnesota Wild prospects 7-4 in the Sunday afternoon game. Some takeaways from that: Connor Bedard is good. We already knew that, but in the Saturday game against St. Louis, he had a hat trick, unbelievable shot. His edge work is just mastery. And we're not going to go too deep into Connor Bedard here on this show because the IceHogs won't see him in the AHL, unfortunately for IceHogs fans. But he'll be up with the Blackhawks, probably in that number 1 center role. Excited to see what number 98 can do this year. But some other takeaways: we did get to see some guys that will likely be with the IceHogs this year. One of them, Marcel. Big guy out of Europe who was drafted in the 5th round by the Blackhawks this past year. He was playing juniors over here in North America this past year. Played a little bit professionally over in Czech. Hadn't really gotten a lot of ice time over there, and so that's kind of why he decided to make the jump over and play some Canadian junior hockey. Enormous guy out there. Plays at 6'4", about 245, 250. He's going to be really intriguing to watch as a power forward this year for the IceHogs. He's trying to make the Blackhawks, obviously, potentially with Chicago, but we anticipate him here in Rockford. He has signed an AHL contract. I had a chance to see him in the dressing room, and they open up the room and let reporters in there during camp, and I just happened to see him taking his pads off and things like that, and don't want this to be taken the wrong way, but he is an alien. I mean, he looked like he has come out of Nick Saban's program at Alabama. He could play linebacker for the Tide or the Chicago Bears, it looks like. He is a physical specimen, and we saw that in the showcase games. He was really using his size and strength, laying hits, being very difficult to play against in the dirty areas, not afraid to go right to the net. So it'll be a lot of fun to watch him develop in these years. Just 19, so he has a lot of room to grow as well. We saw Ryder Rolston score a goal for the IceHogs in Game 2 against Minnesota. Rolston, the guy who was here last year at the very tail end of the year for Rockford, didn't play in any games. He was still nursing a collarbone injury that he sustained with Notre Dame in his junior season last year. But a guy who plays with a very high motor, very high compete level, and another one of these guys who's going to be really pesky to play against in the defensive zone, but also has some offensive abilities. He was one of the leading scorers on a Notre Dame team that just wasn't very good last year. And so he'll be a guy trying to make the Blackhawks here in training camp, but likely will get a chance to see him here in Rockford. And so you should be excited for that because he's a good player, great guy, and it's been fun to be around. We saw a bunch of other prospects as well, and we'll continue to kind of go through those guys a little bit as we get into training camp and as we talk to more of them in the coming weeks. But we don't want to get too far down the road before we bring back in Mark Bernard. So the second part of this Bernie interview is coming up. Again, we go everywhere in this interview, so sit back and enjoy. Those stories are unique to you, but they also line up with a lot of the other stories that we've heard about the type of man that Rocky Wirtz was. So.
Yeah, it was a sad, when Kyle Davidson called me to inform me, because Kyle knows how much he meant to me and what he had done for me, and it was a sad day in our household.
Yeah, no doubt. Sad for the entire Blackhawks community. And I know that you, like Rocky, are known to wander the concourse sometimes, and like you were saying earlier, kind of mingle with fans who I'm sure have opinions of this, that, and the other thing. But we haven't really kind of introduced maybe what you do for the team. I think most people intuitively know, but I'm sure there are some fans that they hear a general manager, president of hockey operations. What is that? Can you just kind of like give us a 30,000-foot view of what you do for the Blackhawks organization and thus the Rockford IceHogs?
Well, for the Blackhawks organization, my job is basically to make sure that day to day that things are running smoothly here, that our coaching staff needs whatever they need to help develop our prospects, that Mark Eaton and his development staff have everything that they need, that we're doing everything we can to help these players develop and make it to the National Hockey League. We like to create basically a no excuse zone, that once they walk in the BMO, that all they have to do is bring a great attitude and work ethic, and they're going to get better, because we have nutritionists, we have masseuse, we have a strength coach, we have a great coaching staff, we have a great development staff, we have sports performance coaches. We do dinner and breakfast and lunch every day for these players. Just come with a great attitude and a work ethic, and you're going to improve and hopefully make it to the National Hockey League. And, so day to day, I'm reporting back to Chicago, letting them know how everything's going here. I'm signing players on American League deals, American League East Coast League deals, building up our depth of players down in Indianapolis. So, because one injury in Chicago affects two teams. It means someone from Rockford's going to get called up, and someone from Indy is now going to have to come up to play in Rockford. And I want to make sure that we have players in Indy that are very capable to come up here and play, because sometimes a long-term injury, those players coming up from Indy will make the difference between making the playoffs for us and not making the playoffs. We don't get into playoffs last year if Mitchell Weeks doesn't play the way that he did for us in net last year. And you can name several players like that go through. I'll make different minor league trades. Like I said, coordinate. Nick Anderson is a wonderful help to me on a day-to-day now, because up until 4 years ago, I was doing all the per diem, the travel, and things like that as well. So he's taken that kind of burden off me. But it's kind of a jack of all trades. You're doing everything and anything that they might need you to do down here to make sure this is running smoothly. And going off what Rocky would usually do in the community as a philanthropist, I try and do it on a smaller stage and try and give back to the community here, me and my family. So like I said, we love being here and making sure that this organization runs smoothly and has success, because it's walking that thin line of having success and also winning. Developing, and you want both, but sometimes it's hard to achieve both. And it's going to be a fun season this year with so many young players coming in, but it can be done, and we have a great coaching staff and a great development staff, and it's always going to be fun for the fans here.
Let's talk a little bit of this year, if that's okay. Some familiar faces coming back for sure. Some big names that IceHogs fans will know from years past, last year specifically, but some new faces as well. How are we doing roster construction wise for this year?
Well, if they'd stop getting hurt, it'd be easier. Losing Luke Philp really till probably the end of February. It'd be great if he could be back for some games this year, because I feel awful for him. He's been training so hard, coming off a great season last year. And to have your season wiped out like that, it's just heartbreaking. But, being able to sign Luke Philp, David Gus, Bretzini, like before the season even ended last year, really gave us a great core to have back. And then, we've got young players like Tepley's is going to obviously return. So that gives us another guy that's going into his, I want to say, fourth year, because the first year was kind of a broken season. It was only that 32-game season. But we have to wait and see too. With these guys are going to Chicago trying to make the team. Yeah. So you never know who's going to be assigned here. Like Michael Hardman, he's going to Chicago trying to make the Blackhawks. He plays a big piece here last year, and if for some reason he was back here, he'll be a pivotal role here. But these guys are going to Chicago to make the Blackhawks, and Rockford right now is the furthest thing, from their mind. And that's not a slight on Rockford. That's just the way it is. Yeah. They want to be Blackhawks before they're IceHogs. And
we want them.
We want them. But we have young players that are coming in, that, they could start their pro careers in. Like Colton Dock is coming out of junior hockey. He's a big, powerful, skilled forward that can play in your top six. We have Antti Sorella that'll be coming over from Europe for his first year of pro hockey. Jalen Lipin, that is joined us at the end of last year that will be coming back for a full season. Ryder Rolston, that will be coming in. Marcel. No, I think I have to trade for Ivan in Colorado and get him. So just to mess you up. So, but we have Marcel.
That's easier for me.
Yeah, we have Marcel that will be joining us for his first year of pro hockey over here, and then same with on the back end. You have Ethan Del Mastro's coming out of junior hockey, Nolan Allen's coming out of junior hockey, and then in goal we have Drew Comesso that's going to be starting his first year of pro hockey. So that's potentially 8 rookies, that could be here in Rockford coming out of training camp. So you've got to surround them with good people. And, on the back end, you've got Louis Crevier that's coming into his second year and is just, if he's not in Chicago and he's here, is just an unbelievable human being and is looking to take the next step in his development, which would be more on a leadership role. And he can help some of these younger players. We have Josh Healy that, we signed. Our fans know him from when he was in Milwaukee a few years ago, and our coaches are aware of him because he almost killed Reichel and Evan Barrett the one night in Milwaukee. He's a huge open ice hitter, but is a great person and a great veteran for our younger players to be around. And to go with Sini, Gust, and Philper, these guys, they want to be in the NHL, but they're great leaders when they're here in Rockford. Yeah. So you want to have a good mix. These young players have to learn from good older players and learn how to be a professional, because I always tell fans, like when they're like, I thought he would have done more. And I'm like, well, it's only 2 weeks into the season or 3 weeks into the season.
And he's 19.
And he's 19 or 20 years old. And these players, for a lot of them, when they get assigned here from Chicago, it's the first time in their careers they've never made a team. They've been cut from a team. All through youth hockey, they're probably the best player on their team. Going into college, junior, one of the best players on their team. Then they get to Chicago. I'm making the Blackhawks, and they get assigned to Rockford. That's the first time that they've been not successful in their careers. And so it's a little bit of a bump in the road there when they come here. And not only are they getting over that fact, a lot of them are learning to be adults and live on their own for the first time. They have to find
That's a whole nother adventure.
Yeah, they have to learn how to do their own cooking, their cleaning, find an apartment, pay bills. So they're not only learning to be professional athletes, they're learning to be adults. And everybody adjusts at different time periods. Some guys it might take 3-4 weeks. Some guys it might take 6 weeks. Some guys it takes 3 months.
I'm still learning.
Exactly. We've got guys going into year 3 that are still learning. But, everybody matures at a different time period. And, the one thing that I take a lot of pride in, and I know Anders does as well, is we're kind of picking up where their parents have left off and helping them through that maturation process. And we're teaching them how to develop and be professionals, but we're hopefully teaching them life lessons that they're going to take with them the rest of their life. I always tell the players, if hockey's a novel, then, if your life is a novel, hockey's the introduction. There's a lot of chapters of your life left after hockey is complete. And hopefully that we give you some life lessons that are going to help make you better husbands and fathers and things that can take you forward in the rest of your life. Because as you'll find out, hockey ends quickly and you have a lot of life left to live after that.
Well, speaking of young guys, I wanted to bring up a young guy that you've signed to an AHL deal that you didn't already mention, but Ryan Gagne coming out of Oshawa, I believe it was, in the OHL. Maybe a guy who it's easy to forget about with some of those other big names, those Blackhawks draft picks that could be coming in. Gagne kind of known as a two-way guy on a team that didn't see a ton of success there. Had a little bit his last year, but what can you tell us about him and why should we be excited to see him on the ice?
Well, first of all, he's a big centerman that can skate extremely well and has a good mind for the game, good hockey sense. Speaking with his general manager, his head coach, up until the last year, they played him in a different role. They played him in a defensive role. They had a lot of offensive players. And then in his last year, junior, those offensive players were gone. And they took the shackles off and said, we need you to produce too, which he did. And when I'm looking at those type of players, the one thing that stands out for me is when he wins league awards or is a nomination for a league award that's voted on by his peers, by other coaches in the league that see him day to day, when he's the second best penalty killer in the league for his division, or the hardest working player, that speaks volumes to me about the character of this young man. And he's going to be a fun player to watch here in training camp. And, you know, these guys are coming in looking for jobs. They're hungry. You know, again, we need depth too, because these players are all going to spend time here at some point during the season, whether it be Ryan Gagne or Kyle Maximovich or Ross McDougall. Like, we have depth players for a reason, and they're going to play in Rockford at some point. They might make the team out of camp, or they might have to start in Indy, but they're going to see time here. They're part of our organization, and we take a lot of pride in bringing in the right players, because they have to be, number one, they have to be high character, and then they have to be skating skill are the other high things that are high on our list.
You signed Anders Bjork to an AHL deal as well. That felt like a pretty big get. A guy who brings a lot of NHL games under his belt to the organization. He's going to be a little closer to home. He's a Mequon product. How big was that to sign him to bolster those the top six?
Well, it was huge, because after Luke Philp, as it was announced to our fans that he's going to be out a minimum of 6 months with his Achilles injury, we had to fill that need, and we didn't want to force one of the younger players into a role that they're not quite ready yet for. That's unfair. We want them to adjust to pro hockey and kind of get their feet wet at their own pace. We don't want to force them into a role they're not quite ready for. So when we started looking around and speaking with Kyle Davidson and Norm McIver and Brian Campbell and Jeff Greenberg and our whole group up there, Anders Bjork is a player that they really liked at the end of last season. He played extremely well after the trade from Buffalo into Chicago. And we didn't know if he'd accept an American Hockey League deal, but he did. But don't get me, his first goal is to go to Chicago and earn an NHL deal. He wants to be in the National Hockey League. And if he comes to Rockford out of training camp, same thing. He's going to be playing his tail off trying to earn an NHL contract, just like David Gus did last year, and get back to the National Hockey League level. But in the meantime, I know he'll be a great mentor for young players here.
Well, and you mentioned Gus getting that NHL contract, his first, and getting his first NHL goal and his first NHL shift. Like, how important is that from an organizational standpoint to see guys get promoted and kind of taste that top level of hockey a little bit?
Well, it's huge for me in the way that when I go out to agents the next year, signing players to an American Hockey League contract, I can say we're not afraid to flip that to an NHL deal and give a player an opportunity if he has deserved it, which David did last year. Rob Klinkhammer started here on an American League deal. Rob was a player that I had in Norfolk after Chicago left and Tampa Bay came in for that year. Rob was on that team, and I signed him immediately as soon as I got the job here. But it was on an American League deal, and he earned himself an NHL contract and an NHL game, and it was someone that I thought very, very highly of, and unfortunately I traded. But when Rob and I talk about that now, it's kind of funny, but I traded him because back in in 2010, 2011, 2012, we had so many young prospects here, Jeremy Moore and Brandon Peary. Rob probably wasn't the first call-up, and he deserved a better chance at the National Hockey League level, so I made a trade with Ottawa, and he went to Binghamton. And when I talked to him, when I made the trade, we were both upset because, I'd had Rob for 5 years at that point, and I said to him, this is going to be the best thing for your career because they don't have a call-up guy in Binghamton. You're going to be the call-up guy. So he went to Binghamton, he worked extremely hard and got called up to Ottawa, where he finished the season, and that summer signed with the Arizona Coyotes and spent the next 6 years in the National Hockey League before going over to the KHL. And, it worked out, and we and Rob always have stayed in touch. And it meant so much to me last summer when he reached out to me to thank me for everything. that I had done for him in his career as he was retiring, and asked if he could still reach out to me because he wanted to stay in hockey. And I said, absolutely. Anything I can do to help you or guide you, I would be glad to do that. And it was shortly thereafter we had an opening for an assistant coach. And, Anders and us and our group decided that we wanted to go with someone younger. And I suggested that Anders talk to Rob, and I said, just talk to him. And if it's not the guy, it's not the guy, but see where it goes. And it ended up with Rob being here as an assistant coach. And, when I walk in the coach's room and I see Jared and I see Anders, or Jared and Rob, two former players of mine that I signed to come here that are now coaches for me, it kind of, again, makes you feel a little bit older. But they're both going to do great things in their coaching careers. And, they made the most of their opportunities here.
You mentioned trading away one of your favorite players. Like, how difficult is that? But I also want to talk specifically about the trade deadline this past year when, we had to say goodbye to three big names here, Adam Clendening, Dylan Secura, and Josiah Slavin. I mean, how difficult was it to say goodbye to those guys as a part of kind of gearing up for a playoff push?
It's never easy because those first of all, you're not dealing with hockey players. You're dealing with human beings, and they have families. They have, some of them have kids, and it's not easy to do. And my wife will know when something's up because I won't sleep the night before. She'll be like, are you trading something? She'll get up the next morning. She'll say, who are you cutting? Who are you trading? Because you didn't sleep last night, so I know something's up. Because if it didn't bother me as a person, I need to get out of the job. These are human beings that you're dealing with first and foremost. But I also have a job to do to try and strengthen our team and to look for a long run in the playoffs. And, in terms of a player like Josiah Slavin, other players last year were starting to get recalls ahead of Josiah. And you always want to try and help a player succeed. If it's not going to be with Chicago, maybe with a different organization. So, that was a good opportunity for Josiah, and it was a good opportunity for us to bring a player in that I felt we would need going into the playoffs, a bigger guy in Hunter Drew that has size and can skate and be a little bit more physical. And, and then in terms of Adam Clendening, we were trading Patrick Kane to the Rangers, and that was part of that whole deal where we were going to bring back a defenseman that was a little defensive minded as well. And we had found that we were going to be able to turn some of that power play time that Adam was playing into an opportunity for Alex Vlasic to step up and take a bigger role. But, sometimes a trade happens if a team asks for a player and they're part of a bigger deal. There's nothing you can really do about it. And as far as Dylan Secura, I thought we were getting an opportunity to bring in Rocco Grimaldi, who was a proven point per game
one
player.
Of the most elite scorers in the league.
Yeah. And he was over a point per game here with us. So, you're doing what you feel at that time is best for your organization. It doesn't happen quickly or lightly. A lot of thought goes into it. I have a lot of conversations with, Anders about it because at the same time you don't want to disrupt the locker room. Yeah. And it's nothing that I enjoy doing or take pride in doing. It's a perfect year would be starting the year with one group and ending the year with that group. But unfortunately, in pro sports, that barely ever happens. And at the same time, you're hoping that you can give these players a better opportunity somewhere. Because personally, I want these players to play in the National Hockey League. And if it can't be with the Chicago Blackhawks, I want it to be somewhere else.
I think I want to say it was 3 days around the NHL trade deadline, I think the IceHogs had something like 35 transactions. Now, a lot of that's coming from the NHL side, right? Like the call-ups and such. But when you are approaching a trade deadline, is that like your Super Bowl? I mean, like how much are you sleeping? You talk about losing sleep. Like how difficult is that 72-hour span, those 3 days leading up to that window where everything seems to be happening at once?
Well, it's a stressful time because at the same time, I'm in daily contact with Kyle because if they make a move there, it's going to affect our team because someone from here will go up to Chicago to take that place if they're not getting a player in return. If, for example, they're trading a player for a draft pick, well, now they're down a player. Someone from Rockford's going up. So then now I have to fill that spot. And we had a lot of injuries at one point last year too, where I had basically drained our depth in Indy. Now they were struggling because now they're calling players up from the Southern Pro Hockey League. Yeah. So it was kind of like I was making trades, and some of the trades I was making were depth trades where I brought in, at the time, it was like Colin Billick. I brought him in from Manitoba for future considerations, and he went to Indy and was depth for us there. He only unfortunately got up for one game because we got healthy and there wasn't another opportunity. But Zach Jordan fit in that mold, and it goes on and on and on. But I want to try and keep our lineup together without losing the depth in Indy, and it's a lot of work, a lot of phone calls.
Kyle Davidson's worried about one team. You're worried about three, essentially.
Well, exactly.
Keeping in mind three.
And we have to remember that, every trade that's happening, it's for the best interest of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Right.
It's trying to make the organization stronger at the NHL level, to make them better, more successful. Mm-hmm. And then I have to kind of sometimes pick up the pieces at this end if we don't get a player back. And, Kyle and the group there have been fantastic with me and saying, hey, you do what you need to do to get it done. And that's another thing. Like my job is to make sure that when Anders walks in that locker room, there's 23 to 25 players on any given night or any given day that he can choose 20 to go to bat with that night for our game. And when it comes to the lineup, that's Anders. Like when it comes to who's playing the power play and who's playing the penalty kill, that's Anders' decision. He's the head coach. I'm not going to get in that lane. We'll talk after a game about what were your thoughts and what were my thoughts, and they're not always going to align because I'm looking at it from upstairs in a suite. It's a little bit easier to read a game when you're standing up top watching than on the bench worrying about 20 players and what's happening that second. So Anders and I have a great relationship. We see eye to eye on a lot of things, and if he came to me and said, hey, this trade doesn't work for me, it doesn't help our locker room, I'm not going to do it because I have to trust in him because he's in that locker room on a daily basis.
Now, I'm going to ask something that I don't want to maybe include anybody recent. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but maybe from back in the day, was there a trade that you wish you could have that one back that you made?
It's always easy to kind of, I think, to look back.
Hindsight's 20/20.
Yeah, but like every trade, in whether coming from the National Hockey League or the American League level, it's always something that there's a reason behind it. People would look and go, oh, why did we trade so and so to that NHL team at that time? Well, maybe it's something to do with the salary cap that they don't quite understand. There's a lot of different reasons. We don't just wake up one morning and decide, I'm going to trade this guy. Sometimes
the BMO has 6,200 general managers in there watching the game with you.
And maybe we should have a suggestion box. Just kidding. But
we'll provide your email in the link below.
It's never easy, like I said, making those deals, and you're always trying to do what's best for your organization. I'll give you an example. Like we traded Josiah Slavin this year, and then we had an injury at center to finish the year, and where Garrett Mitchell went out hurt, blew his shoulder, which now we're down a centerman. If I knew that was going to happen, probably wouldn't have done the deal.
Right.
But again, it's hindsight, right? And you're trying to do what's best for the player, and you're trying to do what's best for your team. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
We've been going on a while here, and this has been awesome. Thanks again, Bernie, for sitting down with us. I have a couple more here. One of them that I want to get to quickly is Fifth Third Arena. Earlier in the season, this past season, you took some of the Rockford staff on like a little tour kind of through the facility. Absolutely gorgeous, the Blackhawks practice facility. I know you were involved with kind of how that facility came to be. What was that like, and what all went into that on your end?
Well, first of all, what went into it is a lot of foresight by both the Wirtz family, and a lot of money by the Wirtz family for us to be able to do that project. And that's something that I know Rocky was extremely, extremely proud of. Andrea Hahn, the general manager there, does a wonderful job running that facility. It's booked from morning to late at night. But I was very lucky to be one of the few that was from the hockey side that was in right from day one when we sat with the architects and it was a blank piece of paper. And we went and toured 8, 9, 10 different NHL practice facilities, tried to pick brains, what to do, what not to do, what to stay away from.
What did you learn not to do?
Pro shops. A lot of teams said stay away from pro shops because you have this it takes a lot of space up in your lobby. And a lot of teams just said stay away from it because you have a lot of equipment and retail items in there for sale that could sit there for a long time.
Yeah.
They told us basically sell the essentials from behind the front desk. Like that youth hockey players need. Tape, laces, mouth guards, neck guards, skate sharpening. But there was little things like that were very helpful. And Andrea, who was coming over from Seven Bridges Arena, is so knowledgeable in the day-to-day workings, of a facility. And again, Rocky Wirtz and the family, the Wirtz family gave us the means to be able to go out and do this the right way and really create a home away from home for the Blackhawks players when they go in there. And you saw it firsthand, like their lounges, the kitchen area, the rich dark woods that we know Rocky loved. And when it came to designing the equipment room or the medical training room, I don't work in that area. So we're not going to pretend, me and the other people that were on the design group, we're not going to try and pretend that we know what we're doing. We brought the right people in. We brought Troy Parchment and his staff in. We brought, at the time, Mike Gabsky and his staff in. How do you want your area to flow? Because they're the ones that are going to work in it day to day. So they need to have the biggest voice. Same with the gym with Paul Goodman. They needed to have the biggest voice in those areas and design it the way that they saw was going to function properly for the team.
And the Blackhawks use it along with the Chicago Mission and plenty of youth hockey in the area as well. Just an amazing facility if you have the chance to go see it in Chicago. Wanted to also ask, and we might not be too far down the road for you to have too much of a response on this, but just thought I'd throw it out there. The Blackhawks purchased the Chicago Steel in the USHL. Does that have an impact, or what kind of impact does that have on the organization from your perspective? And I guess what can you tell us about that?
Well, I think, again, that's just the Wirtz family and Wirtz Corp making an investment in the Chicagoland community and wanting hockey to continue to grow and develop from the grassroots level all the way up to the National Hockey League level. And, how exciting would it be for a young kid to grow up playing youth hockey and then play at the Fifth Third and playing for the Chicago Mission at Fifth Third and then going on to play for the Chicago Steel and then get drafted by the Blackhawks and later on maybe play for Rockford and then, ultimately land at the United Center. Yeah. The first player that does that will be something very special, and I know will make Rocky, put a big smile on his face because that's what he wants. Mm-hmm. He wanted is to see hockey starting right from the grassroots level at Fifth Third Arena and on upward. And the Chicago Steel has had a lot of success at the USHL level without us, and we're only hoping that can continue. And it's not going to have a big effect on the Rockford IceHogs or the Chicago Blackhawks right now, and they've got their own people that run that organization and have done a great job running it. But it's just another piece of the family for us, and we're proud to have them as a member of the Blackhawks family.
I believe there's only two other teams that, or two other NHL teams that own major junior organizations. I believe it's Edmonton and Calgary, I want to say.
Yes.
So we'd be the first U.S. Organization to own a major junior organization. So that's
if you're
pretty cool.
If you're not first, you're last.
Yeah, right. Well, we're first in this side of the border at least. One more question for you, and it's going back to your playing days. I wanted to ask how many goals you'd think you'd have in today's game. Because last year we saw a couple Central Division goalies, Pyotr Kochetkov with Chicago, and then Yaroslav Askarov, I think it was, with Milwaukee. They both fired him down. Now it's more popular to ice the puck at the end of games. How many do you think you would have had?
I don't know. It's tough to say because it was such a different game. Like if someone ever looked at my stats, they'd be like, "Oh, he stunk." But it was a different game back then. Your save percentages were lower and your averages were higher. That's just the way it was.
And your goals were higher.
Yeah, and that's the way it was in the 90s. Like it was a very offensive type game. it's so defensive oriented now, and the scores are lower. And goalies, nowadays they've had goalie coaches since they're 5-6 years old, and one of the things they really focus on is footwork and playing the puck, and everyone is so good at it. And I'm thrilled that I was able to score 2. And I did leave out, you mentioned earlier, and I forgot to tell this quick story here, but you asked me if I ever did something to the ice in the crease when I was doing the Zamboni.
Let's get to it.
When I was over in England, well, one night we were playing the Cardiff Devils, and we had
strong organization.
A very good, strong organization, and there was an issue at the one end of our rink where it had gotten low. The ice had gotten low in the crease, so it was becoming very sticky and tacky for the goalie to move around. Well, the goalie that night for the Cardiff Devils was Peter Aubrey. And,
you don't say.
Yeah. And
goaltending development coach up until recently for the Blackhawks organization and the IceHogs.
And did a fantastic job for us for 8 years. And we wish him nothing but the best at the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and his family. But so Peter, kept complaining to the referee in the third period. It just kept dragging on. And there's stoppages and plays. They're trying to fix it. And me, being such a patient person that I am, was growing very agitated. And as soon as I flipped my mask down, it's kind of like I went in goalie mode. So don't mess around. And finally, I skated down the ice at a stoppage. And I told Peter in no uncertain words just to get to the other end. And I told the ref, if he doesn't want to play in this end, I'll play in this end. Get him down there. Enough with this crap.
You'll deal with like the sticky stuff?
I'll deal with it. So as Peter goes by me, I kind of shouldered him. And
so he's agreeing to switch ends
at
this point?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and Pete's a pretty quiet guy. And so as Pete skates by me, I kind of shouldered him because I was not in a good mood. And, I went in that end, and it didn't take me long to be like, what did I do? This is not good. But we finished the game, and I totally forgot about that until probably a few years ago. We were talking about something, and Pete brought that up to me. He goes, I thought you were going to fight me. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he started, as soon as he started the story, I remembered it to a T. But it was kind of a funny moment between Peter and me. But
did he get the better of you in that one, or
I don't know. Like I do know my last professional shutout was against Cardiff in Cardiff.
Okay.
With only a couple games left in the season. And
but it wasn't that night with the switching of the ends.
No, it wasn't that night. I had
Did you stay in that end the whole game? Like
just for the third period. It was just the third period, and probably the kid I had on the Zamboni that night. I'm going to blame him for the ice, not me. But
you hired him, right?
No,
Were you the GM at that point?
I was the GM. He was under my control. I didn't hire him.
Okay.
But it was a lot of fun times over there. A lot of fun memories. I spent 6 years in the UK total, from my playing days and then into coaching, and my daughter was born over there. And hockey has been my life. It's been other than my family and my children, it's my true love. What's not to love? You get to go to a job that takes you to an ice arena every day. And I love that we have players that I still stay in touch with that played here 14 years ago. And the fact that they still reach out to me and want to talk, and I check in on them, and that means a lot to me. I don't want to have a player that just is in, and once he's gone, he's gone. Like, I love staying in touch with guys. I love talking to old players, and they'll be like, oh, what's the room look like now? And I'll send them a video, and they're like, why didn't you do that when we played here? But
the sauna now?
Yeah, exactly. Don't get me going on that sauna. But it's a lot of fun, and it's stressful. It's not easy. It's not for everyone. But I've been very fortunate that I've worked for great people, a great family, a great organization. The people that I've worked for, from Stan to Kyle, have allowed me to grow and have space in my job here to be able to do my job, and they trust with what I do. And and I'm thrilled about that. And like I said, if a few years ago I was lucky enough to get my 1,000th game as the GM here, and hopefully this is the only team I'm ever the GM of, because like I said, I care a lot about the city of Rockford. I want to, I've been fortunate to be part of 3 Stanley Cups. It'd be great to be part of a Calder Cup.
Well, how about this being the year? Bernie, we appreciate you having you on. Thanks again. Can we book you for after trade deadline coming up?
Anytime. After trade deadline, it's almost like you mentioned. It's kind of like the Super Bowl, but it's not in a fun way. But the first few days after, it's like your shoulders relax. You can breathe again.
You're going to get a massage.
Yeah, and you can just relax. It's like, okay, this is our group. This is what we're finishing with. Please don't get injured.
Well, Bernie, again, we're glad that you're our GM. We're excited for another season of IceHogs hockey. We'll see everybody on the 21st here at home. Of course, we start on the road in San Jose. How about that?
San Jose. We haven't been out there for a long time, mm-hmm. and it'll be exciting to get out there with our group. A little bit of a bonding trip, and then later on in cold December to head to San Diego for a week.
Not bad. Thanks for booking that in
early
December.
Christmas present.
Yeah. Bernie, thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
And we appreciate Bernie coming on and spending over an hour with us in that interview. We had a lot of fun talking with him. Reminder that the IceHogs preseason game at Riverview Ice House still has some tickets available. You can go to the IceHogs website or scroll back and find the social media posts with those ticket links. But there are still a few tickets available. The IceHogs are giving out, or not giving out, but selling about 500 tickets or so, and the Rockford Park District will be distributing another 175 or something like that. So we anticipate there being around 600 people at this IceHogs preseason game coming up on October 4th at Riverview. There have been some renovations made to Riverview as well, so kind of an exciting time for that group and the Rockford Park District. A little disclaimer, when you walk into Riverview, you're probably not going to enter the doors, look around, and think, man, I love these renovations. And that's because the renovations are more structural in nature. They were necessary upgrades to the facilities so that hockey could continue to be played there, and the IceHogs could continue to use the sheet as well. The upgrades are more in terms of dasher boards and curved glass on the benches and things like that. You're not going to walk in and see a bunch of aesthetic changes at Riverview. Those changes are coming, by the way. They're just not here yet. So it is exciting for the IceHogs to be able to play at the grand reopening of Riverview, as that's what they're billing it as. The Park District is going to have a bunch of food trucks and a bunch of fun, festive activities in the parking lot outside Riverview as well. So be sure to show up early and take part in the festivities, but also enjoy some IceHogs hockey as we get to see a lot of guys who will be playing for the Hogs this year, some guys who will probably be going down to Indy to start the season, but that could make their way back up. Remember last year, there was a couple Indy Fuel guys that made huge impacts on the IceHogs. You think of Andrew Parrott, who came in on the blue line late in the year and was a critical addition for Rockford late in the year defensively. You think of Mitchell Weeks. IceHogs don't get to the playoffs without Mitchell Weeks, who started the year in the ECHL but earned his way up to Rockford. He's going to be right in the middle of the mix again this year in that goaltending room, along with Drew Comesso and Jackson Stauber. So preseason game coming up on October 4th. That's the home game. Again, home not at BMO, but at Riverview. And then on October 6th, the IceHogs will be going to Wells Fargo Arena to take on the Wild in Iowa. So 2 preseason games against the Iowa Wild. The 4th is at home, the 6th on the road as well. We're going to do our best to broadcast those games, at least on Mixlr. That's the plan for now. We don't have that structure built out yet, but we are hoping to bring you at least an audio feed of those games along with the live action, and we hope most of you show up in person because it's more fun that way. Another note, going back to the promo calendar that we mentioned earlier, it's out, and it's pretty incredible. We have a Taylor Swift night coming up in February. I know that our own Chris Toltzman is very excited for that. We have, on February 10th, a jersey retirement night for the IceHogs. And I can't say whose jersey is getting retired, but you know him. I will say that. You are very familiar with his name and with his work. And I don't know how much more I should say, but that is going to be an incredible night here in Rockford coming up on February 10th as well. In addition to kind of some of the big nights, and you can go online and see all these for yourself, we have a local hat series, our local artist hat series, where local Rockford artists were charged with designing IceHogs hats. We had the players do it last year, and we had some awesome lids. This year, some local artists kind of put their own spin on things, and so we're going to have some hat giveaways, one coming up in December, one in February, and one in April as well. 3 Screw City nights, again, October, December, and April. And a bunch of giveaways as well. We've got Sugar Skull bobbleheads on Day of the Dead night, or Dia de los Muertos night on October 28th. Aviator-style sunglasses giveaways, refillable tumblers, Screw City youth jerseys, IceHogs Hawaiian shirts in memory of Jimmy Buffett, R.I.P., and Lucas Reichel bobbleheads on February 24th as well. So a lot of awesome giveaways here coming at the BMO this season. We mentioned Taylor Swift night on February 16th, and a lot of other fun ones as well. You got St. Paddy's Day on March 17th. That's a Sunday. 1999 night on New Year's Eve. Not sure what that's going to entail, but it should be a party. We know that. And, go through the promo calendar and take a look. And if you haven't locked in your season tickets yet, do so soon, because the season's coming up. And we want to make sure everybody is in their seats for the home opener on October 21st against the Chicago Wolves. We've got some season-long promos going as well. On Tuesdays, we've got $2 tacos and $5 margaritas. Those are Fiesta Tuesdays. Wednesdays is maybe the deal of the century. Wet Your Whistle Wednesdays is making a return. It's a ticket, 2 drink tickets for just $20. You can't go anywhere for $20 nowadays, but you get a ticket and 2 drinks for $20 on Wednesdays at the BMO, and then $2 beers on Friday as well. So no reason not to show up to the BMO in force. Be loud and be proud, and make it fun, because we have fun when you guys have fun. And we're having fun bringing you this content here on Hog Talk. We hope that you continue to enjoy the episodes as they roll out in the coming weeks. We plan on bringing you guys some fun interviews here once we fire up training camp and get the players here on campus. And we'll see you for episode 2 coming up in a couple weeks' time right here on Hog Talk.